Hey everyone, welcome back to the Layback Podcast. This is a monumental moment for us as you are joining us for episode 53, which means this is officially the anniversary episode. We have 1 year in the books. We did an episode a week, 52 episodes done, close the book on it, year one complete. So we figured the best thing to do was bring on Director of Operations Gavin Keipp-Stroud and talk through some of the things we learned from the past year, maybe what we hope to accomplish going forward, and just review what we have done. So thanks everyone for coming on this ride with us. We're going to chat about it a little bit today. So hopefully you can just strap in. Maybe if you have some additional thoughts, throw them our way. We'd love to hear what you guys have thought from the past year. So, Gavin, I'm going to kick it over to you. I know there's no questions in there right away, but I'd love maybe if you could take the reins for a little bit, talk about what you've learned from the past year, maybe what you expected from the podcast. I know you're more working on the behind the scenes, occasionally throwing questions my way or talking about who we should try to have on or what we should try to hit on. So, Gavin, please, over to you.
Yeah, thanks for having me on again. I'm glad to be on for my second time here now.
That's right.
And before we even start, it's obviously a big thing for FlexPro Grip, but I congratulate you for being a full-time podcaster now and being really taking the lead on this and driving us with the podcast here. So pretty cool. We made it for a year. Pretty sweet.
Thanks a ton. Yeah, I guess that's even funny to hit on that this now puts us in the, I don't know the exact percentage, but certainly like the upper 5% of all podcasts because there's some weird statistics out there that if you make it past episode 10, you are then in like top 25% of podcasts that have ever been done and probably even higher. If you make it past 20, if you make it past 50, and granted, like a year isn't actually an episode mark, but I mean, hey, episode 53, so we're trending upwards still as far as I'm concerned.
Yeah, for sure. And I know how much work you've put into this, so pretty cool. Pretty cool to see.
Yeah, maybe this is more of a social episode for us, so I guess I apologize for anyone that's really looking for some deep, in-depth content, but it certainly is fun to review. And yeah, I appreciate the, I guess, congratulatory wishes on this because I don't know how much work I expected it to be. I do really enjoy it though. It's been a lot of fun. Selfishly, I've gotten to learn a ton in the process, and I just try to ask questions. One, yeah, to provide a good environment for a listener, but I try to ask things that are interesting to me, things that can help advance my knowledge or help us with FlexPro Grip. And oftentimes these are things that I think are good for the audience to hear anyways. I feel like I heard Ed Sheeran say this, which is funny because I'm not the biggest Ed Sheeran fan by any means, but somebody interviewed him and they said, "How's it feel to know that your music impacts so many people?" And Ed Sheeran's response was like kind of, I think it's funny to hear, but he was like, "Yeah, it's actually surprising for me to hear how much my music impacts others because I just kind of write it for me and it's my experiences, and I think it's awesome that people align with it, but I don't know, it's like my expression." And there's a piece of that with this podcast. Like, yes, I am and we as a whole are trying to educate the baseball world. But as I alluded to, a lot of this is things that I just enjoy talking about or enjoy hearing about, and it's helped me advance. So anytime I hear from somebody else say, "Oh, like I love that episode," or talking about this specific topic, I learned a ton. Oh, sweet, thanks. Like me too.
Yeah.
I'm glad we were able to share that together.
Well, I mean, off of that, is there something that you could point to? And okay, it's okay if not, but like, is there a certain episode or even a certain topic that moves through a few episodes that was sort of your favorite thing to either learn or just discuss over this past year?
Okay, so you might need to keep reminding me as we work through this question because there's obviously a lot of different things I can hit on here.
Yeah.
Or to me, it's obvious, I suppose, might not be to everybody else. But a big one that was really eye-opening right off the bat was the Austin Marchesani episode. And so I encourage people to go back and check on that, specifically talking about Stuff Plus, pitch models, projections, anything that actually comes out to grading pitches. Yes, that might not be the number one arm care topic or UCL injury, stuff like that, which I think is another topic that we can discuss of like where the podcast has kind of gone in some regards. But I knew so little about how these models worked and why some pitches graded out well in some systems and looked terrible in others, and kind of the biases that go into these different stuff plus models or stating what's important. That was just illuminating to me on the topic. And I feel like I can speak the language a little bit better now. I understand what people are saying, or I can look at a model and understand what that model prefers, what it doesn't like, and maybe go look at something else where a pitch might perform better. So it's kind of, in a sense, like I now can find like my preferred statistics where I can look for something that I care about most, or just have a better idea of that concept as a whole. So I just want to hit on that topic first. I don't know if you have any questions or call outs from even that episode before I move on to other topics.
No, you can keep going. I want to hear what you have to say, and then I have another question for you based off
Okay.
something you just said. But
Another one that I think was a little bit for me, this is definitely an audience driven topic that I would say is the whole idea of return to throw programs, workload management, and we obviously are working behind the scenes a little bit. I say we, and obviously they're more just speaking to what you and I are doing on the daily, which might not be obvious to the audience, but talking through workload management is something that we do regularly. And just hearing the different perspectives on it or how it's grown, I love to know that workload management as a whole is now kind of in the common vernacular for our industry. It almost surprises me when it gets presented on now as if it is a new topic because the people that we're interacting with have been preaching it for years. Like I was just listening to an episode on Brandon Golden's podcast with him and Casey Mulholland, and Casey was talking about the work that he started doing back in 2018. And it's like, yeah, like that is how long this stuff has been around. I guess in the grand scheme of things, it's still kind of new, but at least in the baseball world, it's been around for over 5 years, 7+ years. And that's just when Casey started working on it. Ben Hansen was doing it before then. So I love that that topic is becoming more, I guess, every day in a sense. It's a part of the regular baseball discussion now. But I think there's so many things that we can still learn about it and change and make better or improve because I think there are still some shortcomings when we look at workload management as a whole. So, yes, I loved talking about those topics for spreading the current gospel, but I feel like it also gave us insights on FlexPro Grip of where can we make the next change on this? Where can we interject ourselves to better the system? So I thought that continued topic was certainly a fun one as well.
something you said in there was kind of where the podcast has started and then where it's gone. I have vivid memories of us even like discussing the the reasoning for us starting a podcast and what we kind of thought it would be or what our purpose was or who our audience we thought would be. I'd love for you to kind of touch on even if it's like a small recap of like our intro episode of like what our intention was and then kind of talk about who you've seen the audience become and who you've seen the topics become.
Yeah. Okay. So maybe I can hate on myself for a quick minute because on the intro episode, I definitely said that I wanted to talk to parents of players. We've spoken to one parent so far, and that was a combo episode with Andrew Bennett and his father, Tommy. I thought it gave great context to what a high school player is going through as he's getting back on the field and I guess that entire journey. But I stepped away from that, I guess, from really like trying to find parents to interview constantly, more because of what I learned about our listenership. And I would love to have more parents or families tell their stories. But for example, when we were at the Wake Forest Player Development Seminar, we were approached by big league scouts and super high level people across organizations that said that they were listening to the podcast and learning, not just checking it out because they thought it was fun to listen to. And when I heard that, it kind of gave me this kick in the butt of like, all right, who's the audience? Who do I need to keep in mind? Yes, selfishly, like where can I learn? Where can I improve? But also who around us or in our sphere is checking us out regularly. So that was a small shift or maybe where I've dropped the ball slightly. Yes, I do want to hear from families going forward. I don't want to neglect that market, but I've kept that in mind as we've continued to record. Then, gosh, others, or maybe where things have shifted a little bit, is when we got started, I wanted everything to be about UCL, arm care, arm health, yeah, some performance stuff in there, but just how it all relates back to the rehab world or the Tommy John world or what is going on at the medial elbow. I wanted everything to be super niche. And then I have had to, I guess, allow myself to go beyond it a little bit and then constantly trying to reassure myself that, like, no, this is connected to arm care, this is connected to arm health. And I can tell myself it is when we have discussions about strength or performance, or maybe an episode like the Jack Barry episode where Jack isn't himself doing a lot of return to throw. He's working with guys who are healthy. He's helping guys through things and different ailments that they might experience in their career. But he would be the first to tell you it's not that he is presenting as a doctor. That's probably the easiest way to say it. And quite frankly, the majority of the people that we talk to are not doctors. They are working in a very specific role. But all of these people play a major role in the athlete experience. And I believe the athlete experience is important to discuss when it comes to arm care, arm health, performance. And really, what it comes back to for me is I just didn't want the Layback podcast to be the same as every other baseball performance podcast. As long as we maintain our individuality, I can sleep at night. That's kind of what it boils down to for me.
I think something that you hit on it. I think prior to episode one, we kind of thought it was going to be this tunnel, very specific niche podcast, very focused on the elbow and UCL tears. And I think it's expanded beyond that, which I find really cool. And I think I probably enjoy it more because of that. But I also think it's kind of cool to see, like, before we did this, I was kind of scrolling through the episodes just to refresh myself on some of the stuff in the past, but just to see kind of the spider web of guests we've had on, all stemming from FlexPro Grip. So whether it be guys that have used it, guys we've met at seminars or something else, or whatever it might be, it's cool to see where FlexPro Grip has connected to so many different people.
I think that's a great point, and I'm really glad you brought it up because I want to hit on that with the direction that we've gone. So thank you for bringing me back in on this. I know we talked about it before we got started. The mission of the Layback podcast was not just to be like self-serving marketing. like we were only going to have FlexPro Grip users on the podcast or only people like who help us in the industry. We have people beyond our immediate network. There's people that we've talked to that aren't users that I don't know, it's as you said, just people that we have met or that we interact with, or we might share information, but they don't have their athletes using FlexPro Grip, or they might not be a specific user of it. They have a touch in this arm care or baseball performance industry. And I think that's really more important than anything else because it's what are we all doing as a whole to better baseball and better the people that throw for a living? It's amazing, I think, to see how broad our network has gone from getting started and thinking 5 episodes in, oh shoot, who am I going to interview now? It is pretty cool scrolling through, like prepping for this next year and thinking about who is a goal to have on the podcast and thinking of reaching out to these people now versus the thought of reaching out to them then a year ago when we got started. Wow, crazy. Very different. I was like fingers crossed that we weren't being a pest by reaching out to people or asking them to do us a favor. And now I feel we have found this comfortable spot in the industry where we do have a respected name and people do want to come on the show to share their story or just have a conversation. That certainly does feel good. Hopefully that doesn't feel like I'm pumping my tires there or pumping our tires, but I do have a new sense of belonging just by, I don't know, maybe some of the content that we have put out.
Yeah, for sure. Totally. Is there anything that I'd love to hear either in the past year that you learned FlexPro Grip related or something that somebody has shared with you? I'd love to hear that. And then I'd love to hear something you're excited about on the horizon for the next year going forward.
Okay. The thing we learned, this was talked about relatively recently, I think, on the Ryan Yoshida podcast. So it's weird to think about this as like a major breakthrough, but it's stuff that we get better at constantly with just iteration of seasons and users, but the right times to use FlexPro Grip. Yes, we've always had our ideas there. We talk about workload consolidation, so keeping the high days high and the low days low. So we go hard on FlexPro Grip on the same days that athletes go hard on their throwing. We encourage FlexPro Grip to be a part of the post throw routine, really like increasing that communication aspect of what we do, I think has been a big breakthrough for more individualization in the process or making sure that the individual is dialed in, locked in on what their program needs to be for their success and understanding the differences between a starter and a reliever, like how many high days that they might be using in season, or even beyond that, like looking at a reliever, how does it change when we know a guy's a fireman and can get used 3 times a week versus a dude that's going to have more scheduled outings or might not make as many appearances. So there's been some massive like learning moments there. I think there's been some big breakthroughs. Additionally, you can kind of call back on the research. So the episode that Daryl and I did together, talking about what we have coming down the line. And there's been some big breakthroughs on that when we look at fingertip strength versus mid finger strength. So we see kind of the ratio that we want athletes to fall into with flexor digitorum profundus output versus flexor digitorum superficialis output. The Latin names even still give me fits, so I apologize to everyone on that. So don't feel bad if you mess it up. It's just easier to say FDP and FDS or fingertip muscle and midfinger muscle. But those breakthroughs have been huge because now we can use FlexPro Grip not just as an that's interesting tool or as a strengthening tool on top of what's being done in the weight room, but we can use it as something that is super predictive. And it isn't just like predictive because we think it's predictive or we think it could be. There is now hard evidence to show that we can use FlexPro Grip as a predictive or preventative tool to avoid these injuries that are so catastrophic, whether it's flexor issues or a ligamentous issue at the elbow or forearm. I would say those have been like massive learning moments, and really it's the community that has helped us get there and having these constant conversations. And I mean, I'm going to throw this back at you. I know there was a part two to that question, but are there other things that you feel maybe that I didn't tap into that have been big learning moments over the past year?
I think you hit on the mid finger deficits that we kind of learned at some point in the year. I don't even remember when that was, but I feel like when that happened, that was sort of a big breakthrough for us and to focus on. I definitely think just as a group and us having more clients, we've gotten better at programming for guys. And sort of we've always customized programming for players, but I think we've just kind of fine-tuned what works for different guys. And also I think, even speak for myself, but I don't know about you, but I think I've gotten more flexible than I was before. I think I sort of, when we started and we were programming with guys, I tried to, I had a sort of framework and then I would deviate slightly from it. I think I've gotten much more flexible, and I think that's produced better outcomes for our guys.
So kind of understanding the individual and their specific needs.
Yeah, and then being able to understand that, and then understand what we're capable of with the device, and marrying the two rather than trying to stick guys on sort of this or these three things are my choices. I feel we've gone beyond that, and it's been good, and that's been for me a learning experience for sure.
Maybe another piece in there is the advancements of rehab. We're obviously still working on that narrative. I feel like I want to kick myself every time I say it should be in a couple months, because I've been saying it's a couple months for a while. But I guess that's the issue with kind of being a perfectionist oriented group, that we refuse to put out anything that is incomplete. But what we have learned about the introduction of FlexPro Grip and the rehab process, and how it can be used to add objective measures to each step to ensure that when we pick up a ball to throw again with an athlete, they're going to be okay, to cut back on the risk of a setback. Those kind of things, I believe, are really powerful. So we've started to leak some of that stuff out. So the groups that we work with have reference, and we're still in the process of finalizing the narrative. So everybody that is impacted by a medial elbow injury or forearm injury has, I guess, the data and the story behind how impactful objective measurement can be to ensure that you can come back not just as good as you were, but possibly better than you ever have been. So this terrible return or risk of failure is no longer a thing. You look at Dr. Ahmad's research, and yeah, the traditional research will show 90 to 95% of those who get TJ come back. We have been saying for years that that is a completely false narrative, and even take offense to when people say that 90 to 95% of dudes come back. That has always bothered me, because you look at it, just making a pitch again, to me, has never meant you return. I guess that's what the literature was okay with, but I've never been okay with that. So I was so happy to see Dr. Ahmad's group publish literature that showed that returning to play and returning to prior performance are two entirely different things. I think going forward, that's what we really want to hit on. Not just showing that those two are very different things, but actually giving individuals a plan. So returning to prior performance, if not exceeding it, is actually possible. So I think I was able to tie back in that part two to your question earlier of what do I look forward to?
Yeah.
And I guess that's more internally, what do I look forward to? Now, Are there other things that you look forward to? I might have stolen the big one there when I talk about rehab and returns.
Yeah, I mean, I think for me, and this goes to my operational focus on the business, but I think we have some dashboard changes coming here, and then I think throughout the year we'll even have some further improvements on the dashboard and within the app. And I'm excited to see our users be able to sort of interact and digest the data that we're producing a bit better, especially on the team and organizational scale, where managers might be looking at 50 dudes.
Mhm.
I think a lot of the changes we're making and that we'll have over the next few months or even the year, I think will make users be able to find data and use the data on their own without having to interact with us as much. And then I also think it'll allow them to dig in some more and come to us with some questions that we'll be able to step in and help with. And I think it'll make the relationship and the end product and results better.
I think that's a great one, and it has me already thinking about like future guests that I want to have on in a sense, because one of the markets that we really haven't tapped into yet in conversation, granted it's tough because I think some of these people are the hardest worked people in the industry as a whole, but college or pro level athletic trainers. I want to start to have more of those conversations. You look at our past guest list, we haven't had a dedicated athletic trainer on the podcast yet. And my mind goes to like Chris Matarazzo at Vanderbilt or Jeff Strom at Wake Forest. And I don't even know if those guys would have the opportunity to come on given how busy they are during a given week. And I would just love to talk to those individuals about not only how are they managing athletes, the prevention work they're doing, but then having their hand on the rehab side as well. And how are they managing all this information that's coming in from all these different places? So, alluding back to what you were saying, we are going to continue to iterate our systems and our dashboard and our information to ensure that we can make their lives easier.
And in turn makes their lives easier so that they can get more out of it and even ask us some more things and push the product that the players are getting.
Right, that symbiotic relationship.
Yeah.
How can we get better to help them get better, which helps the players get better, and then just that cycle continues to, I guess, raise the standard. I definitely am excited for that time. And what is kind of funny is the off season is a little bit busier for us on player interfacing. So now that the season has gone on its way, we've seen first pitch already occur at so many levels, spring training's off and running. Can we take our foot off the gas pedal? Not necessarily, but instead of every waking hour being athlete or coach meetings, we can at least turn our heads a little bit more back to development and making our process better, which in turn I think can make the process of our clientele better. So yeah, I'm glad you called that one out. I think that's a good one. Gavin, I'm going to throw back the question that you asked me earlier, whether it was topics that I thought were super impactful or that I learned a lot about. What are some episodes that you recall that you particularly enjoyed, or some topics that you felt were, I guess, impactful for you?
Yeah, for sure. I mean, I think broadly, first of all, I think I always love hearing player stories just because I can relate to it, even if it's something that they talk about something that I didn't necessarily experience. Just the the player story is always fun to me, especially players that I know too. I think that's cool, or that I've worked with because I kind of know a bit of their story, and then when they come on the podcast, they dig in some more. So like JJ Almeida is one that just sticks out to me. Hedgeka's been on, and some other players too. And then the second broad bucket I would say is I really enjoy hearing people kind of even it could be almost any topic. There is a limit, but almost any topic that somebody's an expert on in any field, I enjoy hearing them talk about something they're passionate about and something they know a lot about, even if it's something that the topic I'm not even really interested in. I like hearing that, which is kind of like, I think you're sort of the same way. I think why we like some of the seminars and stuff, just because we can hear somebody who's devoted a ton of their time into something. But we want to go specific on a few podcasts. I think I enjoyed Casey's appearance just because I always like hearing him talk, and I like his workload stuff and workload management in general. I know you talked about it a little bit earlier, but I find that very interesting. I think another one to probably highlight is when Tim Campos was on. I enjoyed him, just another guy I like, but I enjoyed hearing him just because we interact with facilities so much. So hearing his sort of his perspective and the way he thinks about FlexPro Grip, but even just like working with players and his player development plan, because I know he has so many guys who come through there.
I think adding on to that, I would say I certainly enjoy player stories as well. An awesome one that I even told you I wanted to highlight before we got on is the only other two-time guest, Miller Hogan. So you joined some incredible company there, Gavin. But going through Miller Hogan's complete rehab process was one, awesome as a company, two, such a feel-good story, three, the fact that we were able to document where he went. I think we had him on 5 weeks post-op. It was either 4 or 5 weeks post-op, all the way to the review of his first outing in the Puerto Rican Winter League is insane to me. And to think that his entire process to get back on the mound to becoming, talking about the return to prior performance, getting back at the same velo with the same stuff. Like, yeah, his walk total might have been a little elevated in the first couple outings coming back, but he finished the Puerto Rican Winter League this past year as the same pitcher, if not, well, I don't know if he would say a little better because he was their Cy Young candidate the year prior when he blew out. But the fact that he was able to get back 91 and 94, throw his crazy 10 pitch arsenal again, make dudes look silly every time he stepped up on the rubber is so, I guess, inspiring to me that these are the stories that we can help tell and that we can be a part of. So it's feel good on our end, and then also giving a platform to a guy like that, and a dude who is basically off grid, aside from when you see him on a streaming service throwing a baseball. Like that, that's a guy that I know his future is so bright in this game. So just player stories, that was an incredible moment to me.
Yeah, without a doubt. Super cool.
Another topic that I wanted to hit on, maybe some fun stuff here, is highlighting some of the episodes. I joke about this with some of the people we have on, but I do want to highlight some of the episodes, maybe run through the top five in total listens or total views. Coming in at number five is Bob Keller, our conversation with him about motor preferences. Kind of an interesting one for sure. That was a hot topic, certainly throughout all of 2024 in baseball, and has only seemed to take off further. Number four, maybe as expected, Casey Mulholland. We definitely had him tabbed for a top five appearance. Number three, Dylan Newcomer, who probably hasn't gotten enough love on this episode based on how much we interact with him and how much he's helped us in the process. But Dylan Newcomer is doing some incredible things with Driveline in the physical therapy world. Then number two all time, Sean Fisher, the current pitching lab coordinator at Wake Forest. I don't know if I have had him tabbed for a top two, but that was a really fun discussion for sure. He's an awesome guy and a bright mind in the baseball world. And then number one all time, and really it's almost not even close. So shout out to him and his following. Peyton Lobdell, the founder of Backyard Bullpens and pitching coach at Hope International. Maybe a highlight from Peyton's episode that I didn't expect to talk about this topic. And Gavin, feel free to comment on this one. But Peyton talked about who baseball content is made for and why it's important for these big companies, whether it's Driveline or Tread or anybody with a finger on the pulse in the baseball performance space, to be mindful of what they're creating, who's viewing it, and who the intended audience actually is. I thought that was a very unique take, and it's not something that I had thought of previously. And the reason I bring that up is we can get this incredible information about pitch design or biases of an individual or how pitchers move. And then you have 12 to 14-year-olds showing up to their local coach saying, I think I'm a supinator. These are the pitches that I want to throw. Is that the fault of these major baseball industry staples? They're not to be blamed for the problem, I don't think. But also, if they weren't so good at what they do and so good at spreading this information, I don't know if these 12 to 14-year-olds would be thinking about what is going on with their fingers at the moment of ball release. And I don't know if that's good or bad, but we're certainly getting smarter as a whole as an industry. So I don't know if you have any response to any of that stuff or a take on it, but please feel free to chime in.
Something you just said was we're getting smarter as a whole as an industry, which I think is reflected in the podcast guests, but even just to your point, if there are topics that are being spoken about at a seminar or anything like that, or even a topic that, you know, takes some very bright minds to debate on and come to an understanding of, that are being talked about by 14-year-olds, I think that's a good thing in the game, even if they might not fully understand it when they go to their coach, like you gave the example of. But I think if it's being talked about, that has to be a positive. Because I mean, I think about when I was 14, J bands were kind of revolutionary at that point. Pretty cool to see where the world has gone.
There's no question about that. And while you were answering, I was scrolling back through episodes for maybe some others that stood out to me that maybe didn't get, I don't know, maybe they weren't as in vogue topic wise, or maybe they strayed away slightly from like the original intention or focus of what we do. And one of the ones that I stumbled on that selfishly was actually one of the most impactful for me was the episode with Adam Katz. Adam Katz, the data scientist from MIT who helps athletes kind of optimize their routines and overall readiness. I mean, shoot, him talking to me about like post-workout routines and how can I recover and how can I be my best for the next day was awesome. I was doing cold showers at 8 p.m. if I had a nighttime workout or something like that, and I couldn't figure out why I couldn't fall asleep. I thought those were going to help me recover, and they were waking me up. So I was just throwing my sleep further off, not realizing how to actually improve my sleep hygiene and different things like that. So I shout out Adam. That was super impactful for me. I was obviously a dunce on that topic going in, but he provided some awesome information. And Adam is a baseball player and he's pursuing his own career in baseball. But also, you think about what he does beyond the baseball field and how he's helping athletes and really individuals live better, happier, healthier lives. I think that's a very, very impactful episode in really mission that he has.
No doubt.
Any other episodes for you? Like you talk about the player stories, some different ones. I know we've had a few episodes that have kind of strayed away in a sense from the original mission, or maybe weird stories that have kind of expanded what we do. I don't know if there's certain ones that you think have shaped the podcast in a sense, or maybe gave you food for thought.
I feel like we've hit a lot of the ones that immediately come to mind. I know when we get off of this, I'll go back and scroll through the list and be like, oh, I should have talked about this and some more. But right now, I mean, I feel like we've hit most of the big ones for me.
There is one that I want to call out. Maybe shameless plug. I did a solo episode last summer when I was just like screwed. I didn't have a guest, poor planning on my part. So maybe not fully understanding what happens with planning and running a podcast. That episode, ironically enough, which I thought was a complete struggle, led to an awesome connection and a guy named Matt Tomitz, who I've now become pretty close with. And we talk a good bit, even beyond what's going on in the sports performance world or the health world or any of this kind of stuff. And I think it goes to show what one, just like putting yourself out there can do, and then two, like reaching out. Matt reached out from that episode because we talked, or I guess I talked on that one about the origin story of FlexPro Grip, and that led to me getting to appear on his podcast. One of the reasons I bring that up, and it's a callback to what you brought up earlier, is just how doing this has built a larger network for us and just maybe put us in front of people or gotten eyes from places that I never expected. And it's resulted in friends, colleagues, individuals that I never imagined speaking with. And now I have back and forth dialogue with them regularly. So I know, Gavin, we didn't plan to run a normal episode on this one. I don't think this has been anywhere close to normal for what we normally do. But are there things that maybe you hope to accomplish going forward with what we're doing here? Or I guess the wish list of guests. What do you think would be an awesome goal for us, whether it's in the next year or the coming years for what we do?
I think just continuing to expand the network and expand both the two buckets, the player stories. As we expand the network of players on there, I think always hearing cool stories, and then expanding our Flex Pro Grip network and having experts come on and share their expertise.
And with that, I would say I want to tap back into the world of surgeons. We had Matt Fury on. Surgeons are probably another one of the busiest groups or the hardest to schedule. So that does get a little bit difficult. But Matt Fury is a guy that I definitely want to have on again. He's making some major advancements in the way baseball players' elbows are treated and operated on. And he's got some amazing research coming down the line. So that is another guy, like I said, that I want to bring back on, or that market as a whole, I think is very worth tapping into. Another group that we haven't spoken to yet is biomechanists. They certainly have stories to tell. So I want to bring on some biomechanists. But then I even think of some of the people coming forward. So I'm going to tease a couple guests coming down the line. Two, in particular, Will Carroll, who has been writing about injuries in the world of athletics for years. He has made a name for himself with whether it's breaking news or discussing injuries and really shedding light on some of the research that happens behind the scenes and how we've advanced as an industry. Another, Gary McCoy, who has worn many hats in the performance world, the strength and conditioning world, and baseball, and even beyond. But he was, we would say, responsible for the only injury-free season ever recorded in professional baseball. He would say, which I of course respect, and I think most people would as well, that many people played a role in that. But he had a group in the, I want to make sure I get this right. I think it was KBO, but it could have been Taiwan. But he had a professional baseball team go through an entire season with no recorded soft tissue injury, which is unbelievable. And I can't wait to have him tell his story. So those are some of the guests that we have coming down the line. And I'm excited to bring people in to this world that we really haven't spoken to yet, or I guess, as you said earlier, expand our network. Gavin, before I let you go, any closing thoughts?
No, I mean, I appreciate you having me on for the second time. I'm looking forward to appearance number 3 in the future.
Yeah, I guess we're gonna have to find reason for it, or maybe in classic fashion, it will come down to me not planning it in advance enough and saying, Gavin, I need you, bud. Not that that's ever happened before. I've never done that.
No, but just in case it does, I'll be
Right. Yeah, nobody could see me wink while I said that, right?
ready.
But Gavin, thanks a ton. This has been awesome. I love the back and forth, and in, I guess, classic fashion, I will talk to you in a matter of minutes when we get offline.
For sure.
Yep. And everyone out there, thanks for laying back with us for this past year. Here's to another and many more. Shoot, we're over the 50 mark, century mark. We're coming for you.